is Hailu G. Sadek, GTS, ADEK. I am an African immigrant, and I am with the African Translation Metro Washington, D.C. based language service provider. And by trade, I am an Amharic language interpreter / translator. Nature of my business brings me in contact directly with members of the Amharic-speaking community here in Washington, D.C., and I'm here to share some of my experience with Council Member Alexander here and Office of African Affairs as to what the voiceless African limited English or non-English proficient members of our community go through on a daily basis. As we sit here today, an African immigrant mother takes her middle school child from school so that child could serve as her interpreter when she comes in contact with the city government agencies, with her doctor. And we can all imagine the issue of privacy when an African immigrant mother has to relate her medical history to her doctor. And here today, our colleague, Mr. Camus from the community, was telling us about HIV/AIDS, how that is affecting members of our community. And the issue of privacy, the issue of competency when it comes to the quality of interpretation being served by a middle school child. And your typical African immigrant has no clue that there exists language access in this city. As far as I know, and I am out there at grassroots level, coming in contact with members of the non-English proficient the non-English proficient members of our community, that they have no idea that they can access services in Amharic today in this city. They do not understand that there exists language access, period. And they still have to rely on more traditional means of getting things done, be it reading a letter that was sent to them from city government. They have to depend on that neighbor whose English is limited too. So not only they are being uninformed, and when there is an attempt to get information, that information half the time will end up being a misinformation. So the community is truly suffering. There needs to be more outreach, and there are various means that we can do outreach, and various organizations, community-based, are willing and are working with the Office of African Affairs as we speak to make sure that happens. And we invite our counterparts, the Latinos and the Asians. They are getting services in their languages, but Amharic, when it comes to compliance with the various departments in the city, is lacking behind. And of course, we would like to see that change in the near future, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you. I believe your testimony is pretty clear and straightforward. Just to ask you that some of the agencies in question, Mr. Camus mentioned the Metropolitan Police Department, the Health Department, and Housing. Would you say those are the major ones? And I guess the DC Public Schools, because you mentioned that a lot of the parents depend on their children to relay the information to them. So in turn, if one of their children had to get some information or for their grades or for an activity at school, the parents aren't translating that information other than what their children tell them. So if they are disciplined or get into any trouble, I can imagine they're not telling the parents that.
Oh, yes.
So DCPS as well.
DCPS, as well as Department of Motor Vehicle. Today, as we sit here today, a Vietnamese person could walk into and take the law test in Vietnamese or in Chinese or in Korean, as well as in Spanish, including English, of course, but not in Amharic. And there are members of our community walking through that door on a daily basis, tens of them. So we would like to see. And the other thing I really would like to see is if there is any way that there could be an outreach to the community so that the community members are aware that there is service out there they can access using their own languages. So.
Well, the Amharic is a part of the DC Language Access Act, so that is one of the included languages. So we have to ensure that all the government agencies are compliant with that. And now you mentioned that, and that's largely for our Ethiopian,
But we work closely with a lot of African immigrant community as well, and French is the other main language that most African immigrants speak.
And are they experiencing the same setback and challenges with the
Yes.
French-speaking community
Yes.
too?
Awareness is not there, period. They're not aware that they can have access services using French or Amharic.
Well, we'll ensure that. We had earlier testimony from our director of the Office on Human Rights, so I'll see to it that all of the agencies are in compliance with that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony.